Welcome to Not Your Mama's Gamer Critical Let's Play Series. I'm Samantha Blackmon,
And I'm Alisha Karabinus.
and tonight we're discussing the second episode of DontNod Entertainment's Life is Strange. Out of time, but only the second half because the first half is not particularly relevant to our discussion.
Because the first half mostly lays groundwork, reminds you of the mechanic of rewinding time, and lets you test it out while reminding you that, you're like friends with certain people and there's things happening all around you. It's a very extended recap series in which you can water plants, play guitars, and take pictures of bunnies.
All the fun stuff. All right. So a couple of things that we want to talk about, just about the game in general. Something that we've noticed through the first two episodes now of the game is that while DontNod has done a really good job of giving us positive representations of different kinds of people, different races of folks, and folks of different body shapes. One of the things that I've found most discouraging about that is that none of the main characters are actually non-white or have a different body shape. Go ahead.
No, very, very skinny girls, very white, freckledy, very similar in shape and size. And in fact, short hair dominates in the game too with the main characters, which I think is really interesting. Or hair being up. That might be an issue with the art. They don't have a lot of free-flowing locks in this game, so I guess long hair would be a problem. But even though a lot of the secondary and tertiary characters are different and pretty representative of a high school, maybe even a little extra diverse for a private high school in the Pacific Northwest, you're right. Our main characters, every major player, with the exception, I guess, of the principal, is white. Very average looking.
Yeah, that and the science teacher who, we only talk to for anything longer than a greeting once, up until this point anyway,
Right.
who's also African American or black of some sort. So it's
But I wouldn't consider her anything close to a main character. She may become a major player later. No, I mean, I mentioned the principal because he does have a very dominant hand in the events of the story, particularly in this episode, considering his role in the ending. But everyone else is pretty much cut from the same cloth. And I just keep asking myself, like, okay, I'm glad that in the student body they're representing diversity. There are more heavy-set characters, which I think is great. Not something you see a lot in video game unless it's like, somebody's grandma. So it's really nice to see, like, Alyssa and Daniel and people who look like actual people. Mm-hmm. But I just can't help but wonder, does the story suffer if Max is black, if Chloe's black, if one of them is biracial, if one of them is Latina? Like, what is holding us back from having a main character who does something and has agency and plays a large role in unraveling what is a very extensive mystery be not a regular white girl?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the way that plays out. It's almost as if, and one of the things that this is kind of reminiscent of for me, and this is dating myself, I'm sure, is that this series thus far, this game reminds me a lot of Dawson's Creek. And I'm old, so I remember Dawson's Creek well.
You're not that old.
I'm not that old, okay. I'll take that. But, you have these angsty teenagers who have these extensive vocabularies and are all deeply philosophical, right? Far beyond their age in terms of their intellect and their general attitudes. And it takes place in the Pacific Northwest. So if anybody remembers characters, it's like Chloe is the female Pacey, right? The bad girl who is definitely headed for some kind of trouble, and who is always just on the verge of failing miserably. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Though, I mean, have there been any decent shows with teenagers that didn't take that kind of approach? I mean, you look at a show like Buffy, even in something like Gossip Girl, where everything was very heavily dramatic. There was nothing but navel gazing at every level, and this habit of making everything bigger than it has to be. In Veronica Mars, in all of the shows, you have characters who are not actual teenagers, but are written by adults with a focus on snappy or interesting dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that we can really expect that much better from a game, but at the same time, there's also the issue where it feels like this game is ticking off a list of like dramatic tropes, like, okay, some character was pregnant and had an abortion, and there's extreme bullying going on, and there's a lot of class issues underneath, and then there's the rich guy who's a bully whose family holds lots of power. It's like every trope that could possibly go down in this school is going down. Every teenage school you've ever seen, it's happening here.
Yep, everything all at once. There's, and then you got to throw in rape, and you throw in all of these other wonderful things. Right.
The overriding mystery, and then everything that happens with Kate. And it's a very small student body, as far as I could tell.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, there's just a lot happening to these kids, and I feel like everybody needs to chill out a little bit.
And it's like, what's become my pet peeve of this game is the constant use of the word hella. It's hella this, it's hella that, it's hella, hella, hella. Has
just
anybody
Chloe.
used hella in the last 2 decades?
I mean, do you mean unironically, or... No, that's really interesting that you bring that up, because it's something that is consistently mentioned in almost every review that I've read, in every video, and believe me, in preparing for the exploratory piece I wrote on this episode, I watched a lot of videos. I read every review on this game that I could find. I know what people think about this game. And it was really mixed. Like, a lot of people felt the same way you did. Oh my gosh, the slang is so overdone. It really starts to invade the character. It feels like it dominates Chloe. Like, the only thing she says is hella and epic. But other people were like, well, it feels like it fits the Pacific Northwest and teenagers, especially teenagers like Chloe. So it's interesting to see how people come at that and how they feel about that representation. So I don't know. I don't know enough about the Pacific Northwest, and it's been a long damn time since I was a teenager. So I don't know. I will say this. From the perspective of somebody who critiques character, narrative, story, it's overused no matter what. Even if it's meant to be overused to produce realism, once it starts to become noticeable, it's too much.
So this is the point where our gameplay diverged, I believe, is that, well, you choose not to shoot at this point, and then you rewind and make a different choice. But
right.
I chose not to shoot, and I don't rewind because I have this thing about playing choice games that once I make a choice, I stick with it. And I did that for like 99% of this game until we get to the very end. But so that we don't spoil what's coming later, I won't talk about that just yet. But you do rewind because you lose the gun here.
Yeah, I lost the gun, and I thought, oh, man. But I also... I have the same thing that you do, wanting to stick with the choices, but I think there's different drive behind it. I try to make a choice that fits with the narrative that I'm creating. I didn't shoot at first because I thought, I don't know if that Max would. And then I considered, when I watched what happened, Max with Chloe is a different Max.
Yes.
And Max with Chloe might have panicked and pulled the trigger. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try that. That seems like the riskier move. Let's go with it. And then it also let me keep the gun, which I liked. So I feel like that's going to be a bad decision later.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's the interesting thing, right? And you mentioned this, is that Max with Chloe is a different Max. Mm-hmm. In the first episode, I liked Chloe as a character. In this episode, I hate Chloe as a character. She is a self-centered, self-involved, generally selfish kid. She forces Max, through peer pressure, over and over again to use her power to rewind time for stupid things like lining up bottles.
Very stupid things.
Right. And I don't know if you got it in your playthrough, but when she starts shooting different things, if she shoots the bumper of the car, the bullet actually ricochets and hits her in the stomach.
No, I didn't get that.
Yes, it actually ricochets and hits Chloe in the stomach. So then she has to rewind time again to save Chloe.
Whoa.
But then, of course, using these powers is doing something horrible to her, because the more she uses them, she starts to have headaches, and
Bloody nose.
She has a bloody nose, and she even passes out. Right, in this part of the video. So, but Chloe doesn't pay any attention to that, and she still forces her to use it over and over again.
Yeah, but then you also have to ask yourself, how much of it does Chloe really know? Because every time Max rewinds time, Chloe no longer knows. So there are whole sections of Chloe that we see that don't actually exist for Chloe. Which I think is a really interesting way to consider it. It would take like an actual breakdown of timeline and a comparison and like a different cut that actually showed us what Chloe saw. But I still think Chloe is aware that this is affecting Max, but is so fascinated with the idea of it that she wants to pursue it as far as it can go. Also, we have to acknowledge that Chloe has some serious emotional issues from, the death of her father, the loss of her best friend, her relationship with her stepfather. We saw in the first episode she's on medication. There's a lot of things going on. It's as much as I don't like Chloe either in this episode, it's also, I think, maybe a little hard to be Chloe.
I can kind of understand that, but there seems to be more to it than just that. But, maybe that's me and my perception of it. Oh, you took the picture, too. I'm horrible at taking the pictures.
I missed a lot of pictures, actually, so I was really glad I got that one. Luckily, I had somebody watching who had already played, and who was helpful in reminding me, like, oh, hey, there's a picture coming up. Make sure you look for it. That was really nice. He didn't spoil anything else, but this was how I found out about some of the divergent pathways. Apparently, he didn't shoot the bumper either, or we would have talked about Chloe getting shot in the stomach. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting that happened.
Yeah, she's self-destructive, and I think that all of those things are really playing into the fact that she is so self-destructive. I mean, they keep doing, they keep demonstrating this over and over again in these small ways, and then Max comes in and saves her from herself over and over again.
There's something that you said there that I really want to touch on before we move on to the next part of this episode. Repeating patterns. Here are the patterns that I've noticed. They talk a lot about global warming and kind of the end of days. There's a lot of references to the end of the world and epic horror and people being punished. There's a lot of instances in which Max physically has to save Chloe, or sort of has to save Chloe, or just in general has to protect Chloe in some way. That's repeated. And there's a ton of references to people actually saying, man, I sure wish I could go back in time and fix that thing that happened, but darn, I just can't, which I think is funny because, obviously Max can. But those three things I notice over and over and over, and I feel like they're all leading up to something, but right now the picture that we have is still a little bit too blurry for me to investigate and figure out exactly what we're supposed to see.
And also she has these visions of these cataclysmic events, right?
Right.
So, there's this tornado, massive tornado that's going to come and destroy the entire town. And all of these visions of these tornadoes are usually anyway, accompanied by these freakish weather events, right? At the end of episode 1, we get the snowstorm in the middle of the summer, right? And at the end of this episode, we get another one. Um, and so it's interesting, and it almost asks if Max is going to be asked to make the ultimate sacrifice at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that Max is gonna make it. I definitely feel like she might be, as you put it, the sacrifice. I will say, for all the beef that I have from time to time with characterization in this game, with the way it feels sometimes like people are being forced together, I like this moment a lot when they're on the tracks and they're just talking and it's quiet
Yeah.
and they're just being people. We don't see this a lot in games.
No.
And I think that moments like this, these humanizing moments, these real moments, are very important. They don't have to take a lot of time. You don't have to try to use it to shoehorn in a bunch of exposition. It just gives us a moment to see these girls being girls who are in a very extreme situation.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And not only extreme in that they are facing this tornado that's going to destroy their town, and they know it's coming. But Chloe is facing this extreme situation in that she's a really problematic home life.
Yeah.
She's dealing with an insane stepfather. She owes this drug dealer money. Her best friend is missing. So you have all of these things, right, going
That's a
on.
lot.
And it's like every damaged girl trope that you ever see, or damaged kid trope, right? I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna escape. It's gonna be better. Run away with me, kind of thing that you hear over and over again in different films, and you read it in novels, especially YA novels, and ultimately that kid ends up dead.
Yeah.
They never do escape.
Or just miserable in some way, if not. I mean, because I was this kid. My situation, I didn't owe any drug dealers a lot of money, but my situation was pretty extreme, and I was focused on that idea of getting out. And it becomes kind of a chicken and the egg situation because, as you put it, you see it in movies, you see it in books, you see it over and over. It's a trope. I'm in a bad situation. I got to get out of here. So you latch onto that because it's all that you know. So I don't know. I mean,
which is interesting because
you like Chloe, but then in this episode I don't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, which is interesting, because what that means is we probably would have been Chloe and Max's kids, because I would have been the nerdy kid, who would have tried to have saved you, right?
I needed some saving from time to time, that's for sure.
But I wouldn't have had special powers, so you might have been screwed.
So what about the Kerouac and? I mean, Max's last name is Caulfield. There's been some chatter on Twitter, too, where some of the DontNod employees have talked about names of people being references to things. There's something going on there, but I haven't unpacked it enough to trace all the references. What do you think? Does this spark anything in you?
Well, the constant reference to literary figures and artists and photographers, all of that still feeds into. I mean, I think it's an attempt to construct Max as the nerdy kid, but I think it's what adds to that Dawson's Creek feel, right? These kids are mature way beyond their years, and so mature that they become unbelievable at times.
Yeah, and Max doesn't feel particularly nerdy to me either. She keeps talking about herself as a geek and she's outcast or whatever, but she just feels pretty average.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then, interestingly enough, she gets called hipster several times.
Those selfies are pretty hipster, but that's about it. The angle.
And the fact that she still uses a Polaroid camera.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But, I don't know, the rest of it, I don't know, I wouldn't classify her as a hipster. This is a really interesting part of the game, and so I want to shift gears for just a second, but I think we'll probably come back to this characterization idea. Mm-hmm. This I loved because, again, I had that person with me when I was streaming who was really surprised at how I did this, and I talked to somebody else. Oh, I talked to Ashley, actually. And Ashley, when I told her how I solved this puzzle, she thought, oh, I never would have thought of that. I never even checked anything else. I did exactly what the game told me to do. The game is very insistent that you go and you find a cutting tool and you cut those wires.
Yes.
But I happened to notice that you could interact with this big cable spool up top after I had the crowbar. So I checked it out, and lo and behold, you can move a brick that's blocking it, roll it down, as you'll see, and take out the whole apparatus down there. You cut the wires, right?
I cut the wires, yes.
Everybody else I've talked to has cut the wires. Every video I've seen, they've cut the wires. I think also, because I noticed this in a playthrough, I think there's also an axe on the wall. So I would be willing to bet that you could also take that axe. And I'm going to check this when I play again and go down there and just chop the hell out of the thing.
I was going to say, and do what? Chop Chloe's foot off?
Oh, that would be, but I'm sure that that's not it. That would be a really extreme branching of the narrative. But no, I think you could probably chop the box until it malfunctions.
Well, I think it's because I have a long history with like point-and-click adventure games.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw that this building was there and the door was locked, then I saw a crowbar. I was like, oh yeah, clearly what you're supposed to do is use this crowbar, open it up, go inside, find something to cut the wires. And then there was a drawer.
Right.
And then I was like, yeah, definitely what you had to do.
Well,
so I went for the...
I was focused on that the same way for the same reasons. This is what the game was telling me. I just happened to notice, as you'll see in a minute, I'm going to go back up there. I happened to notice that you could interact with that big spool. And I thought, I'm just going to check it out. Since I can rewind infinitely, I'm just going to check it out and see. And I discovered this whole other way to solve the puzzle. And it made me so happy. This is such a little thing, but I am always frustrated when there's a very reasonable, logical thing that you can do that the game, for reasons, won't let you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like in The Last of Us, for example. The very first bad guy you encounter that's human,
Mm-hmm.
Joel has to kill him, and you leave him there with his gun and his pack and all of his stuff. I'm like, why would you? For what possible reason in this story would you leave any of that stuff there? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And this is interesting, too, because other people don't save Chloe in the same way. Like, I have to manually save her.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in other playthroughs, you're separated by the train.
Yes.
For a minute, and then they hug after.
Yeah, that's what happened with mine, because I actually was able to pull a lever and the track released her boot. But it was just as the train was going by.
Yeah, and she got up herself, didn't she?
Yes.
And then after the train, then you guys hugged. Yeah, I saw that in a lot of people's. And I thought, this is really... I wonder if that's meaningful, that I had to actually go and save her, but we didn't hug. Like, does that have an impact on their relationships later? Because if the plot is beginning to diverge in these small ways,
Mm-hmm.
and remember, the save symbol is a butterfly, which, and they bring up chaos theory in this episode, these little
Yes.
changes have impacts, right? By the final episode, are we going to be playing like totally different games?
That's a good question.
Man, this is game of the fucking universe if that happens. I'm going to say that right now.
Well, it's going to be interesting, because one of the things that you and I noticed, because since you watched my playthrough,
Mm-hmm.
is because we had chosen different answers and different kind of small tasks early on. As the game progresses, we don't even get the same dialogue branch choices.
No.
And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, and some of the choices were choices that were so unlike what I think Max should have said or would have said. I won't say bad, because they weren't bad choices. That I was thinking to myself, I was like, there had to have been other choices. So when you came into my stream and said that you were like, I didn't even get those choices, I was like, well, it's good to know that there were better choices out there, because I don't like any of these.
Yeah, I know exactly the moment you're talking about, and we'll discuss it when we watch your ending. But I, too, was surprised by that. Like, there's nothing so far in Max's character that had led me to think she would have said those things.
Mm.
But that's some of that butterfly effect, I guess. I don't know. How much time in your playthrough did you spend talking to Kate in the beginning of this episode?
At the beginning, I spent a good bit of time talking to her because I looked around and so I had looked at like pictures in her room and talked to her about what had gone on. I think I went through all of the branch choices when I was actually in her room talking to her.
Mm-hmm.
So I
See,
spent a good bit of
I
time.
didn't. I didn't do it that much with Kate. I got really lucky, I think, with some things that happened in my episode. Really, really lucky. I learned from episode 1 that I'm a very good guesser. Uh, I used look. There's the end of the world party. Small thing.
Of course.
I used that here, and it helped me a lot. I missed so much in this section that I'm really mad at myself, and this is primarily why I'm going to go back and play. I didn't go to the lab with Warren. Apparently, you can get an invite to this party. I didn't do any of this shit.
No, I didn't get an invite to the party. I don't think.
No, I think by the
But I
time
just assumed she never would.
by the time I got to this point in my playthrough, I had a feeling something was about to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what's about to happen, that I was so focused on it that I didn't worry about anything else, and I really regret it now. Just because I want to examine as much as I can.
Yeah. It's interesting. You talk to Zach, so you're talking to people as you go along. I spent some time talking to folks early on, or trying to, and they all shut me down in art class, or maybe it's after this, but
yeah, it's after this.
Yeah, well, in your playthrough was after this, and everybody shut me down. So at that point, I was like, I'm not talking to anybody else. And I didn't make small talk with anybody because since I think 3 or 4 people like literally said not now and wouldn't speak to me at all.
Yeah, I remember watching that from your stream. As I wander through the halls, where's my class? I don't know. Sometimes I want a HUD in like every game, so it can be like, no, dumbass, go this way.
You know what? I was thinking the same thing with this game. In the school and in the dorms.
Who says reefer?
You don't know.
No, you don't know. And I feel like I should know.
Yeah.
Did you take the blame for Chloe? Did you like claim that the drugs were yours?
Yes. In the first episode, I absolutely did.
I did too.
She was already in so much trouble all the time. It's like I felt the need to. She has that feel that while she puts up this tough exterior, that she always needs to be saved.
Yeah, she's not tough at all.
Yeah, not at all. So I feel the need to save her constantly. And I think it's going to be pretty much just kind of a requirement in this game to constantly save her.
This conversation, there's this moment and then there's another one later at the end of the episode that I feel like is thrown in there just to throw the scent off of David. And even though there are other suspects, David is the person I suspect the most right now. And I know I'm supposed to, but I still do, because surveilling your own home is that's pretty messed up. Though I suspect everyone, everybody in this episode, everybody in this game is a suspect to me. Go ahead.
Well, not only that, right? Is that they always also try to explain away the surveilling his own home, right? Is that they want to kind of imply that he has some weird kind of post-traumatic stress disorder from being in the military. And that's kind of yes, you're rewinding a lot. And so I think that that's kind of the way that they try to explain away some of his more radical behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And he says reefer, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, nobody says reefer. Though, I don't know, in your playthrough, did you happen to explore Samuel's workroom? Did you talk to Samuel in this episode?
Samuel.
The groundskeeper.
I talked to Samuel outside, and that is when he explained to me about talking to the animals, and I mentioned to him you got this part too, where you mentioned something to him about the animals in the forest, and he says his spirit animal is a
squirrel. Yeah.
Now when you're at I didn't see it in yours. Well, you might have gotten it because we started after the bottle collection. The deer appears to you again at the junkyard.
Yes, she does.
Yes. So that's interesting. It's like, so what are those moments that the spirit animal is going to appear is also another big question.
That is a good question. But also in somebody else's playthrough, I think actually Sarah's, Sarah went and investigated his room where you do the stuff to Victoria in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
And he has pictures of Rachel Amber.
Oh.
And she got a whole different conversation with him. She got the spirit animal stuff too, but there are other things that I didn't get. And I thought, oh my gosh, please don't make me suspect Samuel, because I would be really disappointed in this game if I don't know the best term to use, if the mentally challenged groundskeeper
turned out to be the murderer.
Yes. Because I'm pretty sure Rachel Amber is dead, and somebody else is going to die. But I don't know if you've looked, there are so many theories about this game. It is like lost.
No, I have not looked.
Wow.
I purposely have not looked.
No, it is crazy. People are constructing these wild narratives, like Warren is suspicious, everybody is suspicious, and there goes Kate. And at this point, I was like, oh, man. And I followed her, and the guy who was watching my stream was like, yeah, I followed her too, but she won't talk to you. But I kept going anyway. I was like, maybe it'll be different for me. It wasn't. She leaves. She bounces.
Yeah, she does. What's interesting, right, because, okay, and we've talked about characterization. Kate is a young Barbara Bush.
Oh, yeah.
A Barbara Bush clone more than anything else, right? The suit, the bun, the general conservative, but she's got this Christian conservative thing going on.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting, right? And she's had something terrible happen to her, but she's not quite sure what it is, right? But
and that's really scary. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It is, right? But we know from the very first episode that Nathan had also drugged Chloe. Right. So he was just slipping roofies everywhere.
Why doesn't Max ever say that?
Yeah. I don't know if she doesn't want to kind of violate confidentiality, or she doesn't make the connection or what have you, but he's also drugged Chloe, which is, why he and Chloe are beefing at the beginning, and he shoots her, and then she rewinds time and stops it. But
I just want to point out that you unironically said beefing. Anyway, no, I mean, you're right. There's a connection there, and that's one thing about this episode that I think that frustrated me the most. Worse than fetching bottles, worse than trying to figure out what the hell Chloe had in her pockets and what was going to happen when a cockroach climbed on the damn jukebox. Why doesn't Max say at some point, hey, Kate, I believe you, not only because I believe you, but because I heard something from somebody else.
Yes. And it never happens.
No.
So, but Chloe realizes once she's been drugged what's going on, and she seemingly wakes up in time to save herself.
Yeah. Tolerance, man.
But that's exactly what it is. And then I didn't want to say that out loud. But Kate, you're kind of sure she didn't, right? Because she says, she's been gone all night. She wakes up the next morning on the floor outside her dorm room, and she says, and I felt like crap. That's all she said, right? So it's like, so what does that mean? And you don't have the option of asking those questions.
No, and I wish you did, but from what I can gather, wasn't as bad as it could have been. They talk about the video, and the address for the video was real, but there's nothing there now. So there's speculation that, of course, after the events of this episode, Victoria takes down the video because she bought the domain, and so, of course, in the real world now, the video no longer exists. But the implications, or rather, what I can gather from people's discussions, Kate did some things with some people, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And I don't mean in any way to downplay the fact that she was drugged and assaulted.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting that the game made the choice not to make it full-on penis and vagina rape.
Yeah, I was going to say penetrative rape. And it's interesting. It's interesting that she talks about it. And you know what? It's weird because one of the ways that I thought about this game as I was playing through, I was like, it's an interactive cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Don't do these things or horrible things could happen to you. Yeah, it's odd. And it's also odd to me, and maybe I'm old and jaded, or maybe I don't want to think that this kind of stuff happens so rampantly in high schools. But I'm like, isn't this more kind of college behavior?
Well, this unpacks something that I don't have fully formed opinions on yet. But I can't help but wonder if the only reason that Kate was saved, in the sense that it wasn't worse, is that she's kind of an object of curiosity. She's very devout. She dresses in a particular way that sets her apart from the other students.
Mm-hmm.
She's very pure in a way that inspires bullies to sully her, but not... I don't know how to say it. Not in a permanent way.
Deflower her?
Right? Yeah, I mean, they don't deflower her. But they don't see her as a person either, because she's a caricature to them.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it opens up a lot of really interesting questions about the way we treat other people based on their beliefs, based on how we perceive them. I mean, just like we talked about with Max. Oh, she's the pixie hipster girl. What, because she has a Polaroid camera and she takes selfies with, like, funny angles? That suddenly gives her an entire identity that is composed of nothing but that?
Well, that and the fact that they constantly call her hipster, right? But
Right.
they call her hipster, right? So they've got to give her one or two things that make her, that are quote unquote hipster traits, right? And it's also interesting. I just noticed this for the first time. She's wearing a T-shirt with a doe on it.
Yeah, she is her spirit animal,
which is very interesting. And she has just found out this morning that it is her spirit animal.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to mention this simply because it happened to me and it didn't happen to you. At this point, my game glitched.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Max got stuck in a corner because it's still seated, seemingly, but the chair was moved all the way back in the corner, and I couldn't move. I couldn't interact with anything. And I was just stuck probably for a good minute or two. And there was no way to, it was very strange. And I think this was about the point that it just kind of kicked in and everybody ran out.
And here we go.
Maybe.
Into the event of events.
And this is the event, and I think you mentioned it as well, is that this is that thing that I had been waiting for since the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. It felt very clearly signposted.
All the signs were there. You could see it coming.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all, but seeing it happen affected me. Oh my God. Yeah. And then rewinding and watching her go back up, that feeling of like, I can fix this, that's Everything about this sequence is very well done, I think, and very affecting. Even though you got some dialogue options that were a little questionable, just what happens here is really unique in games.
And something happens here. She breaks time, right? Because she's no longer rewinding at this point.
No.
Right? She has rewound.
And stopped it and lost her power, too.
Everything has stopped, right? Everything is at a standstill.
The birds are frozen.
But she's not actively
around the birds. Wow.
Around birds, around raindrops. She has to walk. You can't walk through things. You literally have to walk around them.
And you are outside of time.
Yes. And she recognizes, because she says, I can't keep doing this. And it is as if the depth and the severity of this situation have added to the difficulty in the time rewind. So earlier, when she was rewinding time, it was simple things, so the time just rewound and she kept doing it over and over again. Now it is such a deep and severe situation that it kind of absorbs more energy or takes more energy.
Yeah.
And
or maybe she just blew all of her energy on doing stupid shit with Chloe. I mean, we don't know. But the loss of your power here makes what happens all the more real. This is where I really stopped and, like, considered my decisions. And I was really worried about making the wrong choice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God! Because this is somebody's life on the line. Yeah, they're pixels. Okay, it's not a real person, but in the sense of the game, this is somebody's life on the line, and you are powerless now. You just have to say the right thing, but you don't know what that is.
No. And it feels real. I mean, because I took long periods of time to answer these questions or to make these choices. It's like, what do I say? If I say this, what happens? If I say this, what happens? I mean, and some of the answers seem fairly benign, right? It's like, so do I mention your father or your mother or your sisters? Which of these things do I do? But you don't know enough about her relationships with these people.
No, the only thing I knew was that her mother and her aunt had sent her mean letters. Other than that, I didn't know. I guessed father, and I think that was the key that let me have the outcome that I did.
And I didn't choose mother for the same reason, because I had seen the letter from her mother. So I chose sisters because I had seen the picture of her with, like, her little sister, and it looked like a happy, loving relationship. So I said, sister, makes perfect sense.
But this also upset me so much because I thought about it very carefully. Early in the episode, she asks you if she should go to the police or not, and I said, no, don't go to the police. And I was thinking about, what would happen to Kate if she went to the police. She would be raked over the coals. She would be destroyed by the kind of questioning that women undergo in this culture when they say, something happened to me.
Yes.
And I
especially when you're going to say it was done by Nathan, who is a rich, well-connected white kid.
Yeah, he's got power. And Kate's just some girl, and you're just some girl, and you don't have any proof. Nobody has any proof, but there's a video. And there's no way that she can get out of this. I mean, it really made me think about, I don't know if you noticed, if you followed this, but there was a woman in PR for a company who last year tweeted something rather unfortunate right before she got on a plane to South Africa. And it went viral. And by the time she got off the plane, she had been fired from her job, and thousands of people were sending her hate mail because she had made a joke about Africa and AIDS. And I thought, man, it was a stupid thing to say, and it was ill-considered, and she should have never said it. But that one moment has reframed her entire existence. And that's what I thought about during this scene is like, we are in this culture now where a moment of stupidity or a single bad decision or a moment when you trust the wrong person can ruin your entire life.
Yeah. So here's another interesting thing, and I just noticed this about your playthrough. You have an option of brothers that I did not have.
You didn't have that?
I don't believe I did, because I hadn't found anything in her room that said brothers, or maybe I just discounted it because I didn't know anything about her brothers.
Yeah, I didn't see anything about brothers, so I discounted it. I think you did, but we'll see when we watch your ending, because your ending is so different from mine.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, and this game, and I have to throw this out there now, is absolutely beautiful.
It really is.
The art style just kind of really lends itself well to the game. Yes. So there's no long flowy hair. It is not photorealistic in any way, shape, or form.
No, but it works.
It works so well.
I saved her. I'm a hero.
You did. I'm terribly impressed.
It was the father thing. But so you'll notice now in the principal's office, the police officer is not there. And I get some very interesting responses in my dialogue because I'm apparently a troublemaker and a drug dealer.
Yes, you are, because you took the blame for
Chloe.
Chloe's pot, her reefer.
Yeah, her quote-unquote reefer. But the tenor of this situation for me was much different than it was in other playthroughs that I saw because I saved Kate. Well, I'm proud of that forever. No matter what else happens in my life, I saved Kate Marsh. Put it on my tombstone.
Put it on your CV. Saved Kate Marsh.
That should get me a job in 5 years.
Yeah, so the police officer's not there. And yeah, everyone else is there. We have the same. Other than that, we have the same people in the room.
Right, but
here's interesting. Because,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the situation, the feeling of this moment felt right to me because of what had just happened. In other playthroughs, man, I just thought some of the things that happened felt really unrealistic. But we'll talk about that when we watch yours, and I'm going to mention something I noticed when I watched someone else's. Someone who accused... You didn't accuse Jefferson, right? You never did? Or did Jefferson. You?
Oh.
The teacher?
Yes. Ultimately, he is who I did accuse.
Okay, then we'll talk about it when we get to yours, because what happens if you do that? I never did. To me, felt really unrealistic. But watch this. I picked Nathan first because Nathan's a shit and he deserves to be punished. But it turns out, and look at me hesitating, it takes me so long to make this choice because I was like, fuck, this is important. What do I do? Why was Kate on that roof? What do I say? And what I want to say is everybody bullied her. Of course she was on the roof, but that's not an option. So whatever, right. Limitations. Ultimately, here I choose Nathan. And I have not seen what happens to me happen to anybody else in all the videos that I've seen.
Wow.
Which is why I did not keep that choice. It's not good.
Did you accuse Nathan?
I accused Nathan first.
That's in the first episode with the principal.
I did initially, and then I went back and when I replayed it, I didn't. Because the principal was so ineffectual about it that I was like, fuck, I'm not going to tell.
Yeah, I was wondering if that had anything to do with it.
It absolutely does, because at this point he's like, well, you're just making shit up. You're suspended.
Right.
Watch. I get suspended having just saved Kate. I was mad. I was so mad at this point, like... No, I'm not making stuff up. I'm a hero. I'm the hero of the day. That's how you can trust me. And then, see, he's calling me a drug dealer, and I'm a junkie, or whatever. That comes up later.
And I'm like, where does he get that?
I don't know.
She's telling though, because she had one joint.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I'm suspended, and I'm like, what just happened? How did that happen? So I was like, fuck no, I'm rewinding this, because that is the worst outcome. I shouldn't be suspended for saving people.
No, you weren't suspended for saving people. You were suspended for accusing the connected boy.
I guess. But, you got to call it like you see it. But at this point, and there's no option to not sign, which also made me a little upset. I was like, fuck this, I'm rewinding.
It's like, I'm not signing your stupid fucking statement. Yes, you will, or you will sit here all night.
I'll sign it, but first I'm going to try something else. At which point I go back, and I, ouch, that hurt. I accuse David. Because I didn't want to accuse Jefferson. I don't trust him, but I don't think he's bad, which probably means he's the murderer.
And the reason. Okay, ultimately,
I know why you chose to do it. It was the least impactful.
It was the least impactful, but then also in the back of my mind, I'm not trusting him.
Mm-mm.
Because there are rumors or people are suggesting that he's sleeping with students.
Yeah.
Which kind of also made me wonder if he is the reason that the missing girl, what's her name? Rachel.
Rachel Amber.
Rachel. If he's the reason Rachel Amber is not around. So.
Yeah, for any reason, in any way, whether he just drove her away or whether she's buried somewhere and he dug the hole, I suspect him.
Yeah.
He's definitely on my list. It's him, David, Samuel, and some mystery person. I have 4 suspects, but I don't know who the 4th one is.
See, for me, it's Jefferson, David, Nathan, and Frank.
I don't think it's Frank, and I don't think it's Nathan. I think Nathan's just a dick.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is too, but I was wondering if perhaps he mistakenly killed her.
Yeah, that could well be. I'm not discounting that, but it's not the tops of my list. I didn't even notice. We were too busy talking. I didn't get suspended at this point. It was just like, well, we'll investigate further. So I said, okay, we'll take that. And David can be mad at me. I don't care. He's already mad at me anyway. He thinks I'm apparently a drug dealer and a bad influence and lots of other things. So I went with it. I didn't rewind and test Jefferson. I just ran with it. At this point, I was also very tired.
Well, I didn't choose David because I didn't want to make things worse for Chloe.
Yeah, I considered that really hard, but he's such a jerk.
That he is.
And then here's this moment. Everything that happens after the principal's office has a lot of implications.
Yes. There's
this discussion with Warren when it's going to come in just a minute. Oh, see, and look, I'm a hero. I'm an actual superhero. When in other people's playthroughs, it's like, I'm not a superhero, but I am, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what's going to come of that, and I think that feeds into your idea of Max making the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that'll be different in different playthroughs.
Yeah, she's got a halo, she's got wings, so she has, not only is she a hero, a superhero, but she's an angel.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people who were upset because Warren watched the video and apparently may have been watching Max outside of her window to see if she was awake yet to ask her out. But that doesn't bother me.
No.
That's not like some Edward and Twilight level of I'm watching your sleep kind of shit. We're at a private school together and I'm an 18-year-old boy and I really want to, hold your hand.
Yeah, that's kind of the feel that you get from him.
Yeah, I can't hate on Warren. Yeah, he watched the video because a lot of people watch the video.
I was gonna say everybody watched the video, I'm sure.
Right. Okay, so here we are at the Eclipse.
Yeah.
This is not just snow.
No.
This is some universe shit.
I was gonna say, this is planets. This is planets and celestial bodies shifting.
Yeah, this is some top-down shit right here.
Yeah.
So this goes beyond like global warming and the Earth is punishing us into something bigger. And I don't know what the implications of that are.
Something weird and supernatural.
I was mystified.
Yeah.
I don't know how to take that at all. So then we get the ending montage, which wants to make us really study everything. So here we get David talking to Joyce, and it's supposed to make us think of David as an actual human being and not just the physical embodiment of an actual asshole.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Jefferson in his car, the principal comes to talk to him. It's more interesting in your playthrough with what you got than it is in mine, as we'll see. But I did wonder a lot about this. Like, what are they saying?
And why does it look like they're arguing? And
right, and then he drives away.
Yeah, as he's talking.
Yeah. What's going on there? And then sad Victoria. Yeah. And then this kind of bothers me. When Nathan comes in, he just looks so plastic that I can't read him.
Yeah, it becomes a question of, is he there to reassure her and to be reassured himself, or is he there to say, you better keep your fucking mouth shut?
Right. And then here we get Frank and his dog. Yes. Does this mean we're supposed to think of Frank as somebody who's actually important?
Because he's not a throwaway character, because he's here.
Right. Or is this just to throw us off the scent? I don't know. And here, for me, is Kate in the hospital. Which makes me wonder, is she actually going to be in subsequent episodes? Is she going to be gone because she's here recovering? How much is that really going to affect playthroughs? Because, look, we're about to watch it anyway. Let's go ahead and say it. In most of the playthroughs I've seen, she is not saved. Kate Marsh kills herself.
Yeah. And so here's Chloe. Now,
here's Chloe.
Here's another interesting thing. Of course, I just noticed this as well. She's is that a buffalo head on her T-shirt? A skull.
Oh, I didn't see. Yeah, I think so.
It's a skull, so it's dead, right? And that goes back to,
Yeah,
that's
having to save her.
That I have that, she's not going to make it out of here.
What happens if Max loses her powers again in one of these moments when Chloe's in danger? Whose fucking files are these?
And
here's the question.
So I thought that this was Kate's stuff, right? Originally.
It's
right?
not.
And then
though.
It's not. One, because first I paid only attention to the red folder book that says Kate, but there's prescription meds that are being rinsed down with alcohol, presumably, because there's a glass next to it.
Right.
So it's an adult as well.
Maybe. And
then the credits roll. But I want to jump over now and to look at my playthrough.
Right.
And started from where Kate is standing on the roof, and she jumps the first time before Max has the opportunity to rewind time and save her.
And it's important that we look at this because your options were wildly different than mine.
So here's my ending. And we have made some different choices along the way. And I was kind of stunned, like you were, about this. And so it happens. She jumps, and I go, okay, I'm going to rewind this, and then I'm going to fix this, right? And then time breaks, and we have to go through this whole thing again of dodging birds stuck in the middle of the air, but also this feeling of utter helplessness, of, as you said, being out of time, but being out of sync as well. So not only being out of sync with time, but being out of sync with everything around you, with nature, with people, with everything.
And it's really interesting, too, to see, like, that this is not easy for Max. This is a struggle. She's walking slowly. It's difficult. She has her own struggle which is outside of everyone else's struggle, which is a really interesting metaphor, I think, for being a teenager.
Yeah.
Just in general. How everything that happens to you feels so unique, so difficult. You feel really powerless a lot of the time. I don't know, I found this really interesting in a lot of different ways.
And it was interesting that mechanically they make some things so difficult at a moment that the difficulty exists for Max as a teenager and for all the kids around her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. This is like the opposite of ludonarrative dissonance. This is when everything converges to make a spectacularly perfect moment in a game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I can't rewind time. I'm here. And I'm like, how, and I'm asking myself at this point, how did I get here? I feel like I've done everything right because, as I said, I imagined from the very first time I saw her standing in the bathroom at the beginning of this episode that we were going to make it here.
Yeah.
So I went out of my way to make choices that would tell her that I was there for her and supportive of her.
Yeah.
I took phone calls and text messages when I was with Chloe and Chloe got pissed off at me. I told her everything that I thought I needed to tell her in terms of telling her, no, don't go to the police, just like you did, because I wanted to protect her.
Yeah.
And that goes, once again, that goes back to, this distrust of authority, I suppose. I mean, I guess that's who I am, apparently. But
Well,
knowing...
who among us doesn't distrust the cops when it comes to rape or sexual assault?
Or many, many other things. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's a whole other story. But that moment where you're thinking, I want to save her from that because she is already so fragile.
Yeah.
And you can see that suicide was the very next step for her.
And they have designed her so well. I mean, look at her eyes. She looks so affected and so vulnerable that I just want to run over there and give her a hug. But, I mean...
That's going to be a bad move, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, why didn't you help me? And I'm like, I did. I've been taking your calls all day long.
Oh, I know. I was so upset. Like, I'm trying so hard to help you at every moment of this day, except for those times when I selfishly had fun with my friend. But I'm 18 years old, so you have to forgive me.
And, and being 18, she doesn't know what's coming. Even though it's apparent to us for a number of reasons. She's 18 years old and she wants to have fun, and she's got this thing going on with herself in terms of she's got superpowers, and this thing going on in terms of she knows that the apocalypse is coming.
God, watching you play, because I was here at this point in your stream, was just as intense as when I played, and I wanted to tell you what I did, but I kept my mouth shut, and I was like chewing my thumbnail the whole time that you were playing this sequence, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And my husband came in, and I had already talked to him about the episode, so he was standing behind me, and then he was watching you play because he was really involved, even though he hasn't played the game at all. That's how affecting this moment is.
And it took me forever to choose, there, because it's like, some of these, I was like, I don't like any of these choices. I don't like Be Strong. I don't like if there's a million videos or a billion videos, because all of that just seems dismissive. I want more.
Yeah.
Right?
But
and
you know what?
It didn't offer it.
It didn't. But again, Max is an 18-year-old girl, and she doesn't have the experience that we have. I mean, I know you've dealt with students who have been in crisis. I've dealt with students who have been in crisis. We have a very informed perspective on this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Max doesn't. She's just a girl. She doesn't know shit.
And that makes perfect sense, right? She's going to have limited options because she's got limited worldview.
Yeah.
But, I don't want her to be an 18-year-old girl making these decisions.
I know.
A 45-year-old woman making these decisions.
I know. It's so hard. That's what I'm talking about, is that they will have to seriously screw things up for this not to be a contender for Game of the Year everywhere, simply because people are going to be talking about this game. Once they realize the depth of change and shift, what's missing, I love Telltale, but this is what's missing in their games. Real impact.
And here.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this hurt me.
I almost felt like I had almost talked her down at this point, right? Because there's, all of these things going on, and then I had to go back to way too many years of parochial school education, where they actually made us memorize the books of the Bible. Mm-hmm. This is what they did in the 70s, right? to think about what these proverbs said, or what these passages said, right? One was about justice. Matthew, mm-hmm. I believe, is about justice, and Proverbs was pretty. Oh God, I can't even remember. But I remember Proverbs is never going to be about getting people back, but Proverbs are more about learning lessons. And I'm like, yeah, we don't want to go that way, and we don't want to say suicide is a sin. Because you didn't get these options, did you?
No, because I didn't go this route. But I will tell you that watching your playthrough, I knew at this point that it was a lost cause. I was so upset watching this because I was like, it's gone. She's gone.
So I'm struggling. I'm struggling with every fiber of my being as I'm playing this at this point, because I'm like, what do I say? Okay, so it was Proverbs that was justice. I couldn't remember.
Oh, look at her face. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And you can't rewind.
No, you can't do anything except watch.
And at this point, I think I dropped my controller because I was like, I knew it was coming, but that didn't just happen.
I'm really glad that I knew before I watched other people's playthroughs, or I would have flipped out. But because the person who was in my stream freaked out at that moment and was like, oh my God, you actually saved her? That was how I found out. Now, you have a police officer in the office.
Yes.
In your ending, which I didn't have, because she died.
Yeah. I have a police officer who was there investigating, which is strange to me, because you would think that even if there had been a suicide attempt, there would still be a police officer around. But obviously that's not the case.
Blackwell, there's people with money there.
Yeah, they don't want the extra. They don't want bad publicity.
Yeah, now, they can't avoid an actual death, but an attempted death is
interesting. Look, he's got red books with white labels in his office.
Does he really? Oh my God, you're right. I never noticed that.
And not only that one behind him, but look on the shelf.
On the shelf, I saw them. I never even considered him.
There's one on that side, and there's a bunch on the other side.
And they have the white labels just like the other ones. Oh my God.
Yep. You see him?
Mm-hmm. I do. Wow.
And he's the alcoholic, so that would make sense why there was booze and pills.
Oh my God.
So now you gotta add him to the list. And this was a struggle for me too.
This was so hard.
Because here you have to rat someone out.
Yeah, you don't have any choice.
And that's problematic for me, because I want the say nothing option, like in Walking Dead at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't give you a lot of options. You have to choose something.
Yeah.
No option is perfect, but they're not going to let you out of this office, I assume, without saying something. So you got to go.
Yeah, and I did. I think I initially chose. Oh, who did I choose first? Did I choose Nathan or David first? And you were with me. I don't remember.
I was with you, but I don't remember what you chose first.
I don't remember which I chose. And like I said, this it was interesting for me because I never rewind in these games, but this was such
you did all of it, didn't you?
I did it all. This is such a monumental decision that I made. When I made the first decision, I hated it, and I think I was screaming into the mic. I was streaming at this point. I was like, I don't want to do any of this. Um,
Why can't you just say everyone bullied her? This was all of us. Where's that option? I guess maybe that too is too sophisticated for Max. I don't know, but that's the real answer. It's not just David. It's not just Nathan. It's not just Jefferson. It was everyone.
Yeah, Nathan was an asshole. He's a criminal. He's done all these things.
David's a shit who surveils his own family and takes creepy pictures and bullies everyone. And Jefferson is untrustworthy, possibly sleeping with his students.
Yes.
But it's not just them. It's not just these parts. It's the sum.
And I have to ask you this question too. I have like this inkling that David's interest in Chloe goes far beyond fatherly.
Oh no. I didn't get that at all. Now I'm really upset.
Yeah, and I think that's what disturbs me so much because he just seems like such the
I hadn't picked up on that at all, but now I'm just really disturbed because honestly, having a camera on a teenage girl's room is definitely problematic.
Yeah,
but
because you're not just watching her smoke pot, you're watching her sleep. You're watching her dress. You're watching all of her private, intimate moments. And you're recording these things.
Oh, but that I hadn't made that connection at all, and now I'm just really ill. Thank you for ruining my evening.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, that's what we're here to do. We're ruining everybody's day. How are you?
But that's been bothering me significantly since the very first episode when I found the stream of the video of her room. I'm like, that's not normal. That is very
not okay.
Voyeuristic. It is sexualized, and yeah, it was horrible for me at that moment, and it has been stuck in my head ever since.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, so yeah, then I accused David.
And I don't understand. He comes off in this discussion as such a dick. Hang on, in somebody else's episode, you didn't get it right then, so I'll bring it up. In somebody else's episode, the principal was like, whatever, I trust my security officer. And I was like, really?
But nobody asks.
How do you trust him?
Nobody asks him for any proof. He says, you're dealing drugs. Okay, so she's dealing drugs. 1, what's your proof? 2, if you knew she was a drug dealer, why have you not turned her in?
Right. But yeah, it didn't come up in my playthrough and it didn't come up in yours, but in somebody else's. For whatever decisions they had made led them to the principal getting really huffy and saying, no, fuck you, I trust David. But it was just one playthrough that I've seen, and like I said, I've seen a lot. So, okay, this fascinated me, watching, because Jefferson gets really disciplined in front of these students, and that felt very unrealistic to me.
Mm-hmm. But it's not like the principal is the most rational of people, right? And thinking through this again, right? The fact that he doesn't ask questions of David about, why he hasn't brought this to his attention before, or the fact that, he doesn't, he chastises Jefferson and says, she was your assistant. You should have known something. Kind of all of these things. But the only way that he actually disciplines him is to say, you can't go to San Francisco on the student trip.
Right, but isn't this like Administration 101 that you don't discipline or chastise faculty in front of students, especially high school students?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's always a unified front.
This is one of those things where you're asking, like, is this in character for them, or is this somebody else not understanding how academia works? You know, it's one
Yeah.
of those weird things. Like, where do you draw the line?
Is this supposed to give us some insight into him as a principal, or is this just not recognizing that this is never the way that this would have gone down?
Right.
Right? Because that one, they would have never asked the student to accuse someone in front of them.
In front of anyone.
Right. Because you don't want blowback.
Right.
Yeah. So, it's always a good question. Is it because he is this ineffectual alcoholic, or is it just because they don't understand how administration operates? And so here's my ending.
American schools, especially too, because the DontNod is French.
Yes. So, here's my ending. She's still at the end, and she's talking to Warren.
But the conversation is totally different, obviously.
Yes.
And then
he calls her a superhero, and she says, yeah. I had the idea that I was a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you get the memorial instead of Kate in the hospital. And that memorial, oh my God.
Yeah.
The first time I saw that in one of the videos I watched, I just thought, oh, that's so... Because it just hadn't occurred to me. And this is what I kept seeing over and over. Watching streams. I watched a stream from a very popular YouTube personality in which he was adamant there's no other possible outcome. I couldn't have saved Kate. She was going to die no matter what. And I'm sitting here thinking, but I saved her. And it made me realize in that moment how unused to these divergences we are. Yeah. We're used to dialogue shifts and maybe somebody treating you differently, or maybe the replacement of one character with another. But a major character dying versus not dying is an enormous shift in gameplay. Even if we don't see her again, the difference in those two paths is huge.
Yeah, and we'll see it in a second, but it's fully fleshed out. It's not just, a thing. It's not just a picture of Kate, but it is a full memorial, right? Yeah. And it is shown for a significant period of time to build up that kind of empathetic response. So it's pretty interesting the way it operates, right?
And it changes the way we see Victoria and Nathan in that moment, too. Because, Victoria would be upset because she attempted suicide, but there's a whole different level of upset
when someone has actually committed
suicide. Right. It puts a whole different light on this entire montage, in fact.
Yeah, it does. Because, it's like, I screwed up. She got really upset. She cracked. That happened. She just had a break, right? But it's like, no, this person is no longer here because of what I have done.
Oh, my God, I'm just as tense right now just talking about it as I was before. This game, despite its flaws, is really incredible.
Yeah, and it does have its flaws. It absolutely does.
Absolutely does. But the ambition for a sophomore effort, wow.
An episodic game as well, right? And maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's because it is episodic that it can be more innovative and more adventurous, perhaps.
I don't know.
And here's the memorial.
Here's the memorial. And you notice that picture reflects Kate without the puffy eyes.
Yes.
Without the upset. That was pre-video Kate. And now we're back to Chloe. Oh, I didn't look at her shirt again. Damn, what the hell's on it? I know she has a bullet necklace. I remember that.
She has a bullet necklace. It's a buffalo skull, and it's got feathers hanging from each side, kind of reminiscent
Oh, that's
of
great.
a Native American artifact. Yes, but you
Okay,
don't.
look, the labels on the files are different than we saw them on the principal's office.
Are
They're
they?
bigger. They're bigger. That doesn't mean they're not the same. I'm just remarking at this point that they are bigger. But you're right. There's booze and pills and the red files. Oh my gosh. So many implications. I feel like we could record this entire video again and have a different conversation.
Because there are different things that you would remember and different things you could pick out from just watching it again.
There's so much in this game. There's so much going on. Which is why I say no matter where they go from here, unless they screw up in an enormous way, people are going to be talking about this game for years. Once people begin to realize the divergences that are possible, all the differences, because if you're playing by yourself and you don't have any friends who are playing, you're not going to know.
Right.
But once you start to read about it and hear about it, you start to realize what's going on, and it's not typical. It's not standard. This is some new next level shit that DontNod is pulling off.
Absolutely. I mean, and if it weren't for the fact, because I don't read the reviews around a game like this when I'm playing it, I don't want to know what other people are thinking necessarily until after I've completed it.
Yeah.
And so if it weren't for the fact that you had watched my stream and you knew exactly what had gone on, oh, look at that. Ashley Birch does the voice for Chloe.
Chloe, right. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't pay attention to that. But unless that had happened, I would have had no idea about no idea of how divergent our paths actually were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Which is why I called it invisible innovation. It's there. It's huge. But unless you're actively looking at other people's statements about the game, you don't know. Just like you don't know, I mentioned this in the article that I wrote, in Beyond, you don't know in Beyond Two Souls that you can skip the whole attempted sexual assault. Because everything in the game instructs you to stay and see what happens. But if you just make the smarter choice and leave, that whole thing is avoided. And there are things here. If you just do something, a small thing, everything changes. It's amazing. Everybody else needs to be paying attention. Just think, Sam, what are they going to do next?
And I've never been so anxious for the next episode of an episodic game.
God.
But that goes back to what you were saying about Beyond and making different choices. In this game and making different choices, it all goes back to the fact that this game still feels very much like a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
In a number of different ways. If you behave in this way, these things can happen. If you don't treat the environment well, these things could happen. If you do all of these different things, these things could happen. So it just, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that at the same time, because mechanically and narratively, the innovation is just off the chart. But at the same time, it is centered in a very specific kind of morality.
Right. There's a very specific feel on what you quote-unquote should do. It's dominated by very traditional appearing white characters. It's dominated by a very certain approach. and certain lessons. I mean, there are issues at the heart of this game. There are also problems with, like, fetch me 5 bottles so I can shoot them in a junkyard filled with junk.
Yes.
AKA things I can shoot. But we see those kinds of issues with shoehorning gameplay into all of the episodic adventure games. So I don't really beef with them over it. Let's just say that it raised my eyebrow a little, like, really, do we have to do a fetch quest? The shooting sequence was much worse. But despite all of this, they are doing what no one else is doing.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. Wholeheartedly, I agree.
Yeah. So no matter how much they fuck up the characters or input, like, weird, go get this thing that doesn't make any sense because we feel like you need to actually play some game in the middle of your interactive novel, no matter what, in the next 3 episodes, unless they do something really off the wall, I am all in for this. I am 100% on board. I'm there for you, DontNod. Let's do this thing and let's see where it goes.
I got one request.
Okay.
Can we get some music that is not so fucking lily white?
It's pretty white music, but I mean, what else is Max going to listen to? Come on, look at her.
She's a hipster. So they say.
They keep telling us, so I mean, it's going to be sad rock all the time.
On that note, thanks for joining us for this critical Let's Play of episode 2 of DontNod Entertainment's Life is Strange. And until next time, take care and play lots of games.
Many games, all the games.
All the games. Bye, folks.